Hi, it's Yeung, and you are watching BC Now. Thank you for tuning in. Today we are out here in New Westminster. We're just right by the water in a parkade. So this is Pier Park Parkade, and the reason why we're out here today is because there's a press conference that's about to happen right behind me. As you can see, cameras are all set up, and what we're about to hear from is from a number of ministers. They're going to be introducing some new policy changes around gig workers. So those of you who use Uber, those of us who order food and food delivery services, this is about protections for those workers. And watching with me is actually going to be two individuals. So this is Kuljeet Singh. Hi, Kuljeet.
Hi.
So you're going to be watching this press conference with me, and as well Inderraj, who's up there right now. He's got his clipboard up at the front. Two of them have been advocating very, very hard for workers' rights for the last little while, and so we're going to hear their reaction to the policy announcements. So why don't we tune in?
That they may now press star one or at any time to line up for
Thank you.
The question and answer portion will take place after the speeches. I will now invite MLA Janet Rutledge to start the event.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Janet Rutledge. I'm the Parliamentary Secretary for Labour, and I'm the MLA for Burnaby North. And I'd like to acknowledge that we're gathered here on the unceded traditional territory of the Hakamemim and Squamish-speaking people. Joining me today is the Minister of Labour, Harry Bains, and Inderraj Gill, who is will also be speaking, who is a ride-hail driver, and he will be speaking from personal experience about why this announcement today is so important. The last few years, our reliance on app-based platforms has increased dramatically. We think nothing of pressing a button on our phone and anything and everything will get delivered to us, be it our dinner or a ride home. In BC currently, about 11,000 ride-hail drivers working with about 20 companies, including multinational companies like Uber and Lyft, and there are tens of thousands of food delivery drivers working for companies like Skip the Dishes, DoorDash, and Uber Eats. And there are smaller local companies emerging as well, like Fantuan, Coastal Rides, and Whistle. We've been meeting with drivers and listening to their stories, and a number of patterns have emerged. One is the unique flexibility that this kind of work offers is very important to them. But it also comes with low pay, no job security, few if any benefits or protections. And we found out in our engagement that many app-based drivers, many of them are newcomers to Canada, and many face language barriers and other challenges that make it hard to find work in a community that is new to them. We talked to many ride-hail drivers whose foreign professional credentials are still in the process of being certified. We met many who are caring for elder parents or juggling childcare with their partners. And this is why, they tell us, flexibility in work scheduling is so vital to them. But they also told us about serious drawbacks to this kind of work arrangement. Long hours, they told us about working long hours at less than minimum wage. And there's not, they told us that their tips are not always passed on to them from the company. They can be removed from the app, as in fired, without warning or explanation. And trip destinations are often hidden, and what constitutes pay can sometimes be unexplained. And if they're hurt on the job, for many of them, there is no workers' compensation. Our government believes everyone who works for a living deserves to be treated fairly. Our goal is to balance the needs of the workers and preserve this service that customers have come to rely on. We have a plan, and I would like to invite the minister to come up and tell us a bit about it and particularly our next steps. Harry?
Thank you, Janet. And it is really nice to see everyone here. And thank you for joining us here today. And I'm really excited to share some really good news with you today. After more than a year of intensive engagement with those involved in the sector, with those who care about this sector, we have changes to announce that will benefit app-based ride-hail and food delivery workers. We're introducing legislation in the coming days. The changes we are proposing today will come into effect after legislation is passed and new regulations are finalized in early 2024. First, we will establish a minimum earning standards that equals to 120% of BC minimum, general minimum wage, in addition to tips, to be applied to the time that the workers are engaged. We will also making changes to ensure companies don't withhold tips or reduce pay because of tips. Second, we will establish a way for workers to be compensated for their transportation or work-related transportation costs. Next, we are bringing in pay transparency so that the workers need to know how much they will be paid for a trip before they accept the assignment. Currently, customers do not know how much of their fare goes to the drivers, and drivers do not know how much the customer has paid for that trip. The platform companies will clarify to the workers how much they will earn on each assignment, and they will also provide workers with a wage statement for each pay period. We also heard about the difficulties workers have when they are being suspended or terminated unexpectedly, often with no explanation or recourse. We will develop a standard to address this concern. And finally, we will be extending workers' compensation benefits to the workers in this sector. Platform companies will be required to register with WorkCBC. They will need to pay premiums and provide a safe working environment. All of this is because our government believes that all workers, regardless where they are from, what type of work they do, if they are working in British Columbia, they are entitled to a minimum standards and protections like other workers. We are solving the problems that matter the most to the app-based ride-hail and food delivery workers, and our goal is to balance the needs of workers while supporting the continuation of these services that so many of us have accustomed to rely on. And thanks to the input by the workers, the platform companies, and many who advocated on their behalf, we believe that we will accomplish just that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister. Now we're going to hear from Inderraj Gill, and also with him is Kuljeet Singh, who is also a driver and has a perspective on this. So rather than take our word for what their challenges are and what their priorities are, I'd like to invite Inderraj, a ride-hail driver who is also a former food delivery worker, to share a few words and talk about why this is so important from his perspective.
Hi everyone. Thank you for giving us this platform, and we appreciate all the hard work that's gone into it. In the last 2.5 years, I have delivered more than 2,200 food orders, approximately 800 packages, and I have driven more than 4,700 people to their destinations safely across the greater Vancouver area. So if one day took me a little extra time to deliver food, well, I apologize, I had a little too much on my plate. Anyway, I'm Inderraj Gill, and I'm just one of the thousands of drivers who boast delivery stats which are far greater and impressive than mine. But when I speak today, I proudly represent all of us. We are a category of workers who are silently playing a critical role in the evolution of our service, retail, logistics, and the transport industry. It's not just an icon on your Uber Eats or DoorDash app that brings you your food, your shopping, your packages, or your groceries. One of our colleagues who drives passengers from early till late at night once told me his own child did not recognize him because his little one was always asleep when he got home. It all might have been worth it if we were not tragically underpaid, unappreciated, exhaustingly overworked, and even physically assaulted by customers during our workday. We have majorly relied on our customers' generosity to be able to try and make even the minimum wage. In our world, an organization's responsibility towards the workers does not exist. But we believe that is about to change. In the numerous discussions and meetings we have had with the Ministry of Labor and various organizations, we have felt the growing support and concern for our fair wage, safe working conditions, and our right for grievance resolution. This is the first step, and it's a crucial one, towards recognizing us as hard-working individuals who contribute to making people's lives better. We look forward to receiving pay which reflects our hard work. We look forward to having the same rights and benefits as any of you at your workplace. We will certainly be relieved about having a fair resolution process when someone is suspended from a platform, leaving them unemployed in an instant. I can't stress enough on the announcement, enactment, and enforcement of regulations which give us a fair shot at making a life. We are hopeful this work being announced today will do all those things which just might help my colleague spend a little more time with his child and grow a relationship with them. Thank you for hearing us out.
Thank you, Inderraj. I must say, as someone who participated in some of the roundtable engagements, I was very moved by the stories I heard about how these workers who provide such an important service to our community, just how vulnerable they are. And I think you can tell from the few examples that Inderraj gave and the passion that he expressed it, just how important this is. Now we're happy to take questions from the media. And to help us with that, Hernani Miranda, there he is,
Thank you.
will help us out.
Okay, thank you. Just a reminder to reporters again on the phone, please press *1 to enter the queue. You are limited to one question and one follow-up. Please also remember to take your phones off mute. You are not audible until your name is called. We are going to start with media on site. I believe I have a few questions here. And just please introduce yourself and your outlet.
Great, thank you. Hi, it's Yeung from CBC News. Thank you for that today. So my question is, what kind of response are you expecting from these companies like Uber or like Lyft, like DoorDash? Have they been consulted? Because we've seen in the U.S. there's been so much pushback and so much legal back and forth after legislation's been introduced at a similar level.
Yeah, thank you. We have consulted with the platform companies extensively in the last number of months and years. And they all agree generally that some standards are needed in order to have a level playing field among themselves, and also so that the workers that they employ have certain rights so they could be applied equally. So I think my expectation is that these app-based companies are here, provide very important service that we all accustomed to. But at the same time, we expect them to treat their workers with respect, with dignity, and that the minimum standards of protection and rights will apply. And my expectation is that they will work with us on that. And because we have had extensive consultation with them.
And the 120% of minimum wage, have you guys done the math on what that's going to work out to for annual salary for these workers?
Right now, based on $16.75 an hour, our general minimum wage, it works out to be $20.10 an hour. And so we work with these companies, and then we looked at other jurisdictions. And some say that, it should be higher, others say it should be lower, but we believe this is the right balance so that the workers are guaranteed certain minimum wage, and which means that during the period that we determine, that if their earnings are less than 120%, the company will be making the difference.
Just checking if any other media on site have questions. Just one question, one follow-up, please. Introduce yourself and your outlet, please.
Zach Vestra, the Tai. Minister, when it's all said and done, and with a couple variations, this looks a lot like what Uber and UFCW have lobbied Canadian provinces to adopt, up to and including the 120% minimum wage for engaged time. Why are you giving the company what they want?
Well, that's not exactly what the company wanted. They never talked about the cost of doing business. We are bringing that in, and we looked at different, like I said, a different pay scale, and we believe that this is the right balance. But having said all of that, we will be monitoring going forward. This is a first step. So we will monitor to see if the wages that these workers are earning going forward are actually complying with 120%. We want to make sure that there is a compensation for work-related expenses. We want to make sure that the workers' compensation is also applied to them, because under, I think, UFCW and Uber, you've seen that some workers were accepted for their claims, others were not. So we want to make sure that all workers that are employed in ride-hail business and for the food delivery are covered by the workers' compensation benefits, which include wage loss, which include their health care, which include return to work. So none of that was part of that package that you're talking about. So there's a lot of different things, but there are certain things that the company brought to our attention, and we believe that, the position that we are taking is the right balance. Make sure that the jobs are preserved, at the same time the workers are treated with the fairness and dignity.
In 2020, your party, as part of your election campaign platform, promised to create a government-backed benefits plan for workers who are not otherwise covered. I don't see that here. Why not?
Well, I think that part we still have not moved forward on. That is still part of my mandate letter, and we will be looking at going forward. But this right now here is to make sure the minimum standards apply and enjoyed by these workers who are employed in the ride-hail industry and for the food delivery. There is a lot more precarious work, gig economy out there, but this is a first step. These are the workers who have been supplying these services, but they told us during the consultation that they don't even know what the customer paid them, and they don't know, or the customer don't know what the workers are getting part of that fare, and they don't know what the trip will look like, and they didn't know if they got beat up or get hurt at workplaces, but they will recover for the workers' compensation. So this is the first step. These are the workers we are targeting right now, and I believe this is the right step to start with.
Any more media on site with questions? No, so we are going to the phones now. We will start with Rob Buffum, CTV News.
Oh, hi, Minister. I just wanted to get your reaction. Obviously, this is going to cost more for these platforms who have to increase the wages they pay folks and provide for things like WCB. What do you say to consumers during this inflationary time who now will presumably some of those costs will be passed on to consumers who rely on these services?
Well, when we consulted with the platform companies and the workers, the platform companies brought to our attention that it may cost them more, but they also know the expectation is if you are doing business in British Columbia, that the workers also have certain rights, that we have labor laws that will be applied to. So during consultation, we worked with them, and they assured us that some standards are needed. And also, the British Columbians expect these companies to pay these workers and treat them with the protection of minimum standards, like health and safety, like protection for workplace injuries and illnesses, like the minimum wage. I think British Columbians expect that, and these companies, we expect them to work with us going forward, because, like I said before, regardless who you are as a worker, where you come from, what your immigration status is, if you are employed in British Columbia, the minimum standards will apply to them just like any other worker. This is Canada 2023.
Rob, did you have a follow-up?
Yeah, I'm just wondering about some of these benefits it was alluded to earlier, but like healthcare benefits or severance, for example, as I understand it, those are not provided for with this proposed legislation. Why not? And when do you think we might see, specifically, when might we see that happen?
Yeah, so I think those are the area that were identified by the workers and the changes that would like us to move forward with and work with the companies to make sure that we are all on a kind of, we all understand what the changes are needed. And so we will be introducing legislation along the lines that I've just mentioned next week. And then we will start to develop regulations which will come into effect early next year.
Next question we have is from Justine Hunter, Globe and Mail.
Hi, thank you. Minister Baines, can you just walk me through how this stacks up with some of the other provinces? Yeah.
I think we are the first province who, through extensive consultation with the platform companies, the workers, and their advocates, I believe we have come at the right place, the right balance, where companies know what their responsibility is to the workers. They know that there has to be a minimum standards to apply for all workers, not only among the companies so that they have a level playing field, but they also know the expectations of British Columbians is that all workers are treated with the minimum standards and protections and health and safety protection. So I think that's the kind of work that we are on. I think we are probably the first province, first jurisdiction to bring this legislation, and my expectation is it will work for the workers and it will work for the platform companies.
Justin, do you have a follow-up?
I do, thanks. And I'm wondering if I could ask Inderraj Gill to come back to the mic. I just wanted to ask you to give us an idea of how this will change your working conditions. You talked generally about what it means, but just give us a sense of what you expect will be different starting in January or whenever these regulations come into play.
Thanks for the question. It's a very important question for us and I believe for the people. So the first thing that I feel is going to change is that we'll feel more secure out on the road or doing deliveries, picking up passengers. We'll feel more secure that we'll be covered, we'll feel safer. We'll have wages that will just match what the next person or what the average person is making. We also feel that this will give us a platform for maybe, if there are issues with somebody being suspended, which just happens so often. They'll give us a platform to talk to these platforms, these apps, and we will have a fair review process. I think these are the things that we're mostly looking forward to. And as we go, I'm sure, as Mr. Baines said, we are going to be continuously working on making things better for us and for everyone. So it's a crucial step. I'll go back to my statement. It's very important that we do this today and have a precedent set so that the future workers or even the current workers can actually start enjoying their work, most importantly. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Next question is Rob Shaw, Czech News.
Hey, Minister. So if the intention is to define the drivers as employees and then call them online platform workers, but then exempt them from many of the kind of employment standards like overtime and vacations and shift times and that type of thing, why even make them employees at all? What is the significance of that in your mind?
Yeah, I think, thank you, Rob. This is important that for the purpose of employment standard and workers' compensation, these employees will be considered employees and their platform company will be considered employer for the purpose of, regardless what they are called under different laws, other different laws. I think the important part here is that the economy is different, this work is different. This is not your typical 7 to 3:30, same employer, day in and day out, 2 coffee breaks, 1 lunch break. And I think these folks, these workers, sometimes they're employed by 2 or 3, multiple different apps to maximize their earnings. So it's difficult to declare them employee and employer for that purpose at that particular time. So I think that's why we will be, through the regulation, the development of the regulations, we will be ironing out many of those complexities that comes with this sector, and understanding that this sector is different. It's not our traditional 7 to 330 and employer-employee relationship under our employment standard and under our labor code for those type of or different type of the rights that these workers enjoy.
Just a moment for the truck to pass. And Rob, did you have a follow-up?
Sure. Just building on that, Minister, how does an employer begin to pay WorkSafe BC premiums if someone's on Skip the Dishes tonight, Uber tomorrow, Lyft the next day? How do they know how much to pay, and how does the employee access it, like assuming that it's paid on their behalf? How does that work?
Yeah, I think you touched on the complexities of the sector, and that's exactly what the WorkSafe BC will be instructed to work with the app-based companies, platform companies, to determine how they could actually charge premiums, when to charge premiums, and who to charge premiums. I think that's the work that we will leave with the WorkSafe BC, and they are quite capable in determining what the premiums would be and who should be charged and who's covered.
Next question, Wolf Deppner, Black Press.
Yeah, hi, Minister. Thank you for taking my question. Question about timing here. Legislation coming forward, regulation to be finalized in early 2024. When would gig workers actually see the increase in their wages?
Yeah, so yes, we are announcing the changes that we are moving forward with. In coming days, we will introduce legislation that will enable us to develop regulations, and that will take some time. And my expectation is that we need to move very quickly on this. And as I said, the regulation should be completed early 2024, and then that's when they will be applied, and the workers will be entitled to all the benefit that we talked about under the regulations that we will be determined.
Wolf, did you have a follow-up?
Yes. June 1st of next year, or July 1st of next year, I should say. Can you be what if any more precise date can you offer at this stage?
As I said, early next year. So my expectation is as soon as possible, early next year.
Our next question's Alec Lazenby, BC Today.
Minister, so you talk about minimum, just following up on a couple of my colleagues, you talk about minimum standards, and you talk about the difficulties of applying it based on the number of apps that these workers may be working for. But why not take a shot at minimum standards, including things like vacation pay, maximum hours, things that other workers in this province take for granted, and sort of when you think of minimum standards for employment, those are some of the first areas that would come up. So I'm just wondering if you can talk a little bit more about why there wasn't more of that included in this initial effort.
Yeah, I wish it was that easier and clear. With employee and employer, 7 to 3:30, day in and day out, working for a same employer, same employee. The hours are established by the same employer. I think the laws that we have today were designed to deal with those type of traditional workers, and they never contemplated that the worker will be employed by a different employer at the same time, or the worker can decide when to start work, when not to work. And so I think these are the complexities that come with this new economy and the new way of these workers are employed. And I think that's why we need some time to develop the regulations in each of those areas. I think largely we are talking about WCB protection. We're talking about how to compensate them for the work-related cost, and also pay transparency and who's responsible for these workers' wages and benefits at any given time. So it is not as simple as a 7 to 3:30 traditional employer-employee relationship. There are complexities, as you mentioned, and it was mentioned earlier, but we will work through it. We have consulted with app-based companies. We have consulted with workers, and taking all that in, I think we are in a good position to develop regulations going forward to make sure that we address all those concerns in those different areas.
Alec, did you have a follow-up?
I do. So in terms of the minimum wage, it's for engaged time. So when they're out on assignment, actively involved in the job. And I understand having, the 120% of the BC minimum wage as sort of a recognition that there is no minimum wage for when they're not engaged. But surely there must be ways, the government can introduce ways to have employers check how much an employee is using the app. And even if they're not out on assignment, why not work towards having some sort of minimum wage, even if it's a lower, for when they're actively engaged in the app, because there must be some way to track that.
Yeah, like I said, this is the first step, and we are bringing these changes, and these are the changes and the challenges that the worker identified during our engagement period, and so we are addressing those areas. And like I said, the complexities are deep because they are different. In this sector, the employer-employee relationship isn't what traditional employer-employee relationship is. When you're waiting, which employer is responsible, for example, and who should be paying? I think those are the complexities that we need to monitor as we go forward. But these are the minimum standards that we need to establish because workers need them, and employer need to know their responsibilities. If they are doing business in British Columbia, the workers are working in British Columbia, the workers are entitled to basic minimum standards as other workers do.
Next question, Richard Zussman, Global News.
Minister, do you expect this to change driver behavior at all? That there are now, in essence, less incentives to race from job to job to job to try to maximize wages, and this provides some ability for drivers to, in essence, take their time on the roads?
Richard, thank you for that question. Believe me, these workers are hard-working workers. They take their job seriously, and many of them depend on the job solely for a living. This is an expensive place to live, and that's why they are looking at different and multiple apps to maximize their earnings. And that's exactly they will continue to do, enjoy that flexibility at the same time, enjoying the basic minimum standards that they deserve and they need. So we're moving forward with those things. But I can assure you these workers are hardworking people, and they will continue to deliver the services that we have accustomed to so far, and that's what they've been delivering.
Richard, did you have a follow-up?
Do you expect this may change the demographic of who drives for these companies, considering now that there is more, in essence, stability around employment?
Well, see, I think anybody who lives in British Columbia, they want to add extra income because of the cost of living here, or who wish to depend on this job solely for making a living. I think anybody is able to join in and work for these platform companies, knowing fully well that now there will be some basic minimum standards, and they will enjoy their health and safety protection at workplaces in case that they are injured or become ill at workplace, and also have a pay transparency and a minimum wages are guaranteed now. So I think this is attraction for many to join in, and at the same time that the workers who are already there, they will enjoy these protections.
Our last question today is from Daryl Greer, Canadian Press.
Hello, Minister. Can you tell me if there's a retroactive element to these rules that will capture people who were maybe shortchanged in the past or injured in the past? Like, will it cover people who, maybe have been injured in a car accident while on a delivery, or who were paid less than minimum wage or had their tips withheld unlawfully?
Well, it's those challenges that the workers shared with us, their experiences that they shared with us, well, some of them you mentioned, that we learned from, and that's how we are devising protection going forward. And it will be protection because we still haven't developed the regulations. We haven't passed the legislation yet. So I think going forward, we will be looking at passing the legislation, and then that will enable us to develop regulations. And as I said, the implementation will be early next year because I'm confident that we will have regulations ready by that time, because we believe that these workers need protection as soon as possible. But there are processes that we must go through. Legislation need to be passed. There has to be debate in the House. Then we will work with the platform companies and the workers to develop the regulations to make sure we cover the areas that we talk about covering, and make sure that the complexities are looked at and how do we deal with those. And then, like I said, this is a first step, and we will monitor going forward. And in the future, we will be looking at if there are any gaps or there are additional areas that we need to address. So we will be making those decisions going forward.
Derry, do you have a follow-up?
Yes, I'm just going to take that as a no. There is no retroactive element. So people who have been perhaps exploited in the past are just left out in the cold. But my follow-up is about why these companies are afforded the different treatment than, say, like someone who delivers for Amazon, someone who drives a taxi cab, someone who delivers for Purolator, for FedEx, for all these other companies. They can employ drivers just the same, but these multinational offshore companies can just kind of hide behind an app and be able to get away with things these other companies that employ drivers in similar positions cannot.
Look, if there is a traditional employer-employee relationship, our current employment standard applies. What we are talking about is a new economy, different way of doing business, and we are trying to develop laws that will keep up with the new economy and the new challenges and new complexities that come with it. Like I said, there are workers that you just mentioned. They have one employer, one employee, and they have that relationship, employer-employee relationship. They go to work for the same employer. But here, as I mentioned earlier, workers, to maximize their earnings, they have two or three or many apps open, and they will pick up whichever app and whichever assignment they want to pick up, and they will decide when to work, when not to work. And I think those are the challenges that did not exist when we are talking about traditional employer-employee relationship. And as I said, our laws were developed for the traditional employer-employee relationship, and this is different. And we will, this will actually give us a platform to look at how we work with these companies and these workers. And then there is, like I said, a precarious work and gig economy more than just food delivery and ride hail. And we will be looking at into those areas going forward. But I think right now, these workers identify some of the challenges. They have brought forward the difficulty they face when they are employed by the companies, and we are trying to address those right now.
That's all the time that we have for today. Thanks everyone for joining, and that concludes our event. I will now pass to Herman, our photographer, to lead you to our group photos. Thank you, everyone.
All right, so who we just heard from was Labour Minister Harry Bains, as well as Parliamentary Secretary for Labour Janet Rutledge, and as well as Inderraj Gill, who is a ride-hail driver, and he was previously also a food delivery driver. And so what we heard today was essentially the proposal for some changes for employment standards here in this province, and those protections, they're protections for people who are gig workers. So some part of this new economy, people who work for companies like Uber, like Lyft, like Whistle, people who are doing food delivery. And, I think the minister and the parliamentary secretary both talked a little bit about some of the changes that they're proposing, but they didn't really kind of get into the nitty gritty of it because, they actually send out some of this information to us media ahead of time. So that's why people knew what kind of questions they wanted to ask and could get into some of those details, and I wanted to share a little bit of it with you. So some of the biggest, I would say, of the proposed changes is the establishment of a minimum wage. So the idea of paying people 120% of what minimum wage is, which is $16.75 right now in the province of BC. And the idea of 120% of minimum wage, so it would work out to about $20 an hour, is because very often Uber drivers, when you get into their cars or ride-hailing apps, they tap and say on, the ride has begun. But, there are hours in between, there's time in between when they're waiting for their next customer to log on. And so that disengaged time, that's the idea that this 120%, that extra 20% is going to make up for that. And it was interesting to hear the minister talk about whether it was enough, So we hear that, the companies have been advocating for that, and the government, as we heard from the minister today, is trying to find a balance between what works for workers and what works for some of these companies. And there is potentially that expectation that prices could go up for consumers. So, they're just wrapping up a photo right now, and we're going to get some reaction from Kuljeet Singh and Inderraj Gill. And so, hi, Kuljeet.
Hi.
Thank you for joining us. We actually asked Kuljeet to come in especially for CBC today to listen to this press conference because, Kuljeet, you've been advocating for workers' rights for a very long time, for more than 2 years now. And, did you actually get to hear some of the details around the changes that are going to be happening?
They say 120% like the more than minimum wage. Yeah. I don't know. Let's see. Hope for the best. But do you think a professional job should be like 120% with these type of jobs where you do snow time, you're driving, rain time, and there are so many other factors. You don't get the overtime. So I don't know.
Yeah, and that wasn't a part of it today, right? Like overtime, sick pay, that kind of idea.
Nothing.
So I wanted to ask you, on the minimum wage, that was obviously a big point, and I shared with the audience what that number looks like. Do you feel like that's enough, that 120%, so $20 an hour is a minimum wage when you are actually, engaged in that app?
What do you think about this?
You tell me.
I don't think so. No. At least you don't have overtime, you don't have vacations, you don't have benefits, you don't have dental, you don't have anything. How are you going to survive like this? That's why I was asking from last 2 years. It's not the thing I was expecting. But still, I'm still positive. Let's see what's the legislation.
Right.
Maybe they will change something. But if I tell you truth, this job is not that easy, people think. When you're working in snow time, when you're doing inspections, you're changing tires, so many factors. This is not only one thing. They say it's enough, minimum wage plus or whatever they're saying, 120%. So I don't feel that I was expecting, but still I'm hopeful.
Right. Yeah. And Kuljeet, for you, because this is your livelihood, you're the one person supporting your dad who's elderly. And so this is your full-time gig. You need this.
Yeah, I have my mortgage going up $1,000. Do you think I can afford with the 20% more than the minimum wage? I don't think so. It's getting harder and harder because I know everybody needs money. So most of people, they're coming to this industry now. It's getting more hard for even us to get rides or doing deliveries or whatever. But I don't make enough these days.
What does your pay look like now? And you know,
I want to show one thing
yes,
on the
yeah, and I
TV.
want to bring Inderraj into
Yeah.
this conversation too. So Inderraj, who you heard was speaking up at the podium. So we're just going to hear from Kuljeet, and then I've got some question for you as well. Yeah. So what were you going to show
Yeah,
me?
I want to show you one thing. This is my total income for 4 days. 379 total income. If I deduct all the tax like expenses, I'm not even like $10 to $12. Do you think it's fair for us? And
So that will double now. What do you think of that? So you would end up, you know,
Yeah.
when the legislation, if it passes as it stands, it would about double.
that's what I'm expecting. Even the thing is, what they want us like less than this, more than this, or the actual one, what we deserve. With the professional job, you don't have overtime. You work 7 days. If they want me to do like same thing I used to do 7 days, I can do that. I don't have any option. If they give me option, at least give us like the proper thing. At least we can survive properly. We are living in the most expensive city. Can we survive like this?
Right. So even if it doubles, you don't
Yeah.
think that it would be enough.
Yeah.
So Inderraj, I wanted to hear from you as well. So, you know, what was your reaction? Did you know about some of the details that were about the changes that were coming ahead of this?
No, I did not.
Okay. So the 120%, so that means about $20 minimum wage. What did you think of that?
I think that's a start. It's definitely not that's going to bring us at par with our even costs of operation in general. So I'm looking at the positives. This is a start. I mean, we're doing a yin yang situation here, but
What do you see as the positives then?
the most important thing is that this is a platform. Like for the longest time, we didn't even have a voice, but now with the Ministry of Labour and with a few more organizations who've been by our side, I feel now these platforms like Uber, DoorDash, Skip the Dishes, Amazon, all of these platforms are hearing us out. And now we can put our concerns in front of them and have answers to our questions and solutions to our problems. So I'm looking at this from that perspective.
Right. So you at least are, you know, being heard, because you've also been advocating for this for a while. I know Kuljeet for about 2 years, and for yourself?
I have I've been a part of this for, I believe, 6 to 7 months. And I initially started as a part-time driver. But every time it's a strong word, but every time I was deceived, every time I was not paid what I was owed, I felt angry and annoyed beyond, I did not know I could get that angry. Because it's literally something's been stolen from me. So regardless of being, driving 2 or 3 hours a day, I wanted what was mine. And I know that it's not just me, there's a lot of drivers out there who are going through the same situation.
And so based on what the two of you were advocating for and what we heard today, how big is that gap? What were you asking for at the time?
Let's say if you're doing a professional job, what would be your minimum standard salary? At least we get $30 to $35 total. Then we can deduct all the expenses, all the things. What is main problem is here, we don't have any benefits. We don't get any let's say dental. It's expensive right here. We don't have that. And another thing, I want to add one more thing here. Thing is, whatever the rider or the person paying for these deliveries or ride hail, where it's going, half of the money, where it's going. We live here in Canadian countries like Vancouver or some other countries. If they are taking even 10% of that money to other country, what's your benefit?
Right, you're talking about these companies
being
multinationals,
Yeah.
and, based outside of
why it's going out of your country?
Right.
We are the one working hard. If they are spending here, I am still okay. At least I know it's going to our economy, have something going on here. I'm still okay.
Right. So you'd be happier if these companies were local or they were Canadian. And Inderraj, I heard you nodding, saying yes when you're talking about the lack of benefits. Was that also a gap for you here?
Yeah, so there's a few issues that are kind of, everyone is being worked about. First off, the pay. The pay that we get also includes, like I said, cost of operation. The gas prices, this is no news. Gas prices are insane, and that's our major expenditure. The gas prices rise. Our wages are the first which are hit. So, Kuljeet is right. Like having around a $35 hourly rate, which is again, there's definitions. You've got engaged time, non-engaged time, and whatever. Those need to be clarified. But that will at least start giving us a little bit in our pocket. And when Kuljeet was mentioning about benefits and dental expenses and whatnot, so that's, I feel, a little too further ahead in terms of we just want the basic stuff like, what if my car gets broken down? I'm not being paid at all. What if I have a doctor's appointment someday? I'm not being paid. So sick pay, vacation pay, we're entitled, we work 7 days, at least 10 to 12 hours. Right? So we need to have a break for everyone's safety, in fact. So that's why I was nodding to what you were saying.
Right. Okay. All right. So obviously, as we heard today, definitely a gap between what...
Sometimes people work 16 hours a day. Where's the rule regulation from BC? Taxi driver can drive only 13 hours. On this app, you can spend like 20 hours. Nobody's here to ask. They send you messages. I have seen like on the left, there's a message. If you're sitting in the YVR area waiting for the ride, it won't count you like towards your total time. What's that exactly mean? Still I'm spending time.
Yeah,
they don't have rule regulation.
Yeah, they're basically pushing us, and they're pushing not just us, every other gig worker. Everyone's aware how Amazon crunches their people. Amazon Flex drivers are gig workers as well. I've done that. And I know there is a minimum amount of packages that you need to deliver in a certain amount of time. So even going to the washroom sometimes feels, maybe I'll just put that off.
I can't imagine feeling that pressure.
Yeah.
So, after hearing what you heard today, how would you say you're feeling about the legislation that's being proposed then?
I don't know yet. What they said, like about 120%, I'm not positive. Like after 2 years, still they don't even understand. This is a professional job, what we are doing, spending like this much time on the apps. I have to take care of my parents. I can't even spend 2 hours like in a week with my father. I work 7 days a week. I told before, like on the CBC News channel, but still I feel like I'm on the same situation right now.
And for you, Inderraj?
I feel Kuljeet is running on fumes, like he's exhausted his patience, but I still have faith. I'm optimistic, and I know that as long as there are more of us who believe that there needs to be a change, we will get it done. I have seen that.
Do you think that it could be possible that could go higher than the 120? Because that's what we heard today.
I'm sure. Because I feel that this is again a stepping stone. This is a starting point. And when the ministry sees that how these changes are reflecting in or translating in the actual lives of gig workers, we've gotten this far. I'm sure if there are discrepancies, we'll get those settled as well.
Okay, well, I want to thank the two of you for talking to me today. This is Inderraj Gill, this is Kuljeet Singh. Both are ride-hail drivers and reacting live to the press conference we just heard about the new proposed legislation that is going to help, it's meant to help gig workers. And you heard some conflicting opinions, some people feeling like it's not quite enough, others still feeling hopeful about what's ahead. The timeline at this point, expecting implementation for early next year. And we'll see what happens. Inderraj feeling hopeful about what's to come. I'm Yeung here in New Westminster, signing off for BC Today. Thanks for tuning in.